The crystal spires of New Geneva stretched toward the artificial sky, their surfaces reflecting the warm glow of 3 distant suns. Inside the towering council chambers, tension crackled like electricity before a storm. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the circular hall, her small human frame dwarfed by the massive alien delegates surrounding her. The Zephyrian representative towered 12 feet above, its crystalline body refracting light into dancing rainbows. To her left, the slug-like Molarian ambassador oozed disapproval from every pore. Across the chamber, the insectoid Thrakari clicked their mandibles in what she had learned was their version of nervous laughter. But Sarah wasn't nervous. She was furious. For the 3rd time this cycle, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, humanity requests permission to establish mining operations in the Kepler sector. For the 3rd time this council denies our request based on what exactly? High Counselor Vexithala, the ancient Etherean who had presided over galactic affairs for 7 centuries, floated above them all in a sphere of shimmering energy. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly in their minds. The young races must learn patience, Human Chen. The sector contains resources better managed by experienced civilizations. Sarah's jaw clenched. Around her she could feel the familiar weight of condescension from species that had conquered the stars when her ancestors were still painting on cave walls. But that was exactly the problem. Experienced civilizations, she repeated, her tone sharp enough to cut steel. You mean the same experienced civilizations that have been mining those sectors for the past 2,000 years while Earth struggles to feed its colonies? A low rumble came from the Molarian delegate. When it spoke, slime dripped from its translator device. Humans reproduce too quickly, always wanting more. More resources, more worlds, more everything. It is unseemly. The chamber erupted in agreement from dozens of species. Clicks, whistles, telepathic bursts of approval washed over Sarah like a tide of dismissal. She had heard it all before. Humanity was too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable. They needed guidance. They needed control. They needed to know their place. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her species' future on her shoulders. Back on Earth, 15 billion people waited for her words. On Mars, the terraforming projects had stalled without rare minerals. The outer colonies rationed everything from water to breathable air. Meanwhile, the Zephyrians hoarded enough crystal-based energy sources to power 1,000 worlds. The Etherians controlled trade routes through dimensions humans couldn't even perceive. The Thrakari's hive ships harvested entire asteroids while human miners begged for scraps. High Counselor, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. Humanity has followed every protocol. We've paid every tax, followed every regulation, submitted to every inspection. We've sent our young people to die. In your wars against the Void Wraiths, we've shared our medical advances, our agricultural techniques, our music and art. She gestured to the towering beings around her. And in return, we get table scraps and lectures about patience. Patience is wisdom, Human Chen. Your species will learn. No. Sarah's voice cut through the telepathic communication like a blade. We won't. The chamber fell silent. Even the ever-present hum of the station's systems seemed to quiet. Sarah could feel thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and consciousness tendrils focused on her. I said no, High Counselor. Humanity is done learning patience from those who would watch us starve rather than share the galaxy they claim to govern fairly. She reached into her diplomatic pouch and withdrew a data crystal that seemed to glow with inner fire. The formal declaration she had hoped never to use. By the authority vested in me by the United Earth Government and the Colonial Alliance, I hereby invoke Article 12 of the Galactic Accords. Humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber exploded into chaos. Shrieks, roars, telepathic screams of outrage filled the air. The Molarian delegate released a cloud of acidic fear pheromones. The Thrakari rose from their seats, wings buzzing in agitation, but High Counselor Vexithala simply floated there, her energy sphere pulsing with what Sarah recognized as deep concern. Human Chen, You do not understand what you do. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Alone, your species will find out what we're really capable of. Sarah finished. She placed the crystal on the chamber's central pedestal, where it began to glow brighter, broadcasting humanity's withdrawal to every corner of known space. As alarms began to sound and security forces mobilized, Sarah turned toward the exit. She had one more thing to say, words that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. For too long, we've accepted being the junior partners in our own destiny. Today, that ends. You wanted to see what humans do when we're pushed too far? She smiled, and something in that expression made even the massive Zephyrian delegate step back. You're about to find out. The doors of the council chamber sealed behind her with a finality that marked the end of one era and the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. Behind her, in the chaos of the chamber, no one noticed the small device Sarah had left attached to the underside of the central podium, a device that was already broadcasting everything it heard to a very different kind of council, one that met in the shadows between stars. Chapter 2. The Hidden Fleet. 3 days after humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, Captain Marcus Steele Rodriguez floated in the command center of the UES Defiance, a ship that officially didn't exist. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of 847 other vessels that were equally non-existent, at least according to any records the Council might have access to. "Sir?" came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Yuki Nakamura from the communications station. "We're receiving the final batch of civilian evacuations from Kepler Station. That's the last of our people out of Council space." Steele nodded, his weathered face betraying none of the satisfaction he felt. 20 years of careful planning, 20 years of preparing for this exact moment, and everything was proceeding like clockwork. "Status report on Project Exodus," he commanded. Around the command center, his senior staff rattled off numbers that would have shocked the galaxy into silence. Commander Elena Vasquez, his tactical officer, spoke first. "All 12 shipyards are operational and producing at full capacity. We've got construction facilities in the Andromeda Gap, the Ghost Nebula, and 17 other locations the Council has never bothered to survey properly." Steele smiled grimly. The Council's arrogance had always been their weakness. They assumed that because humans were junior members, they couldn't possibly accomplish anything significant without supervision. They had been very, very wrong. Dr. James Okafor, the fleet's chief science officer, continued the briefing. "The new drives are performing beyond specifications. We've achieved faster-than-light speeds that exceed Council technology by at least 40%, and the quantum tunneling experiments are showing promising results." "Weapons?" Steele asked. "All vessels are equipped with the new plasma forge cannons and quantum torpedoes," replied Commander Vasquez. "We've also completed installation of the shield systems based on the tech we acquired from various sources over the years." Steele didn't ask about those sources. He didn't need to. For 2 decades, human intelligence operatives had been carefully, quietly borrowing technology from Council species. A crashed Zephyrian scout here, a disabled Thrakari fighter there, even a few components from the mysterious Etherian ships that occasionally phased through normal space. The Council had always assumed humans were too primitive to understand advanced technology. They had never imagined that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in building new technology. It was in taking existing technology and making it better. "And our friends?" Steele asked carefully. Lieutenant Commander Nakamura's expression grew serious. "The outcasts are ready to move on your signal, sir. The forgotten clans of the Rim, the Void Drifters, even some of the machine collectives that the Council pretends don't exist. They're all waiting for your word." Steele nodded slowly. The Galactic Council liked to present itself as representing all sentient life in the galaxy, but the truth was far different. For every species with a seat at the Council table, there were 3 more that had been rejected, ignored, or actively suppressed. Species that were too small, too strange, too independent, or too inconvenient for the Council's vision of galactic order. Humanity had spent 20 years finding these forgotten peoples, building alliances, sharing technology and resources. While the council saw humans as junior partners to be managed, the outcasts saw them as equals to be trusted. It was about to make all the difference. "Incoming transmission," announced Nakamura suddenly. "It's from Council Space. Priority 1 encryption." On screen, the hologram that appeared showed a figure that made several bridge officers gasp. High Admiral Catherine Shaw, officially retired from Earth's Space Forces 5 years ago, unofficially one of the masterminds behind humanity's secret preparations. She stood in what appeared to be a council listening post, surrounded by alien technology. "Steal," she said without preamble. "They're mobilizing. The council's calling it protective intervention. They're sending a fleet to Earth to restore order." "Size?" Steele asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Everything they've got. 3,000 ships from 12 different species. They're not planning to negotiate, Marcus. They're planning to make an example." The bridge fell silent. 3,000 ships against humanity's hidden fleet of just under 1,000. On paper, it should have been a slaughter, but Steele wasn't worried about the numbers. He was worried about what would happen to the galaxy when this was over. "Admiral Shaw," he said formally, "I hereby activate Operation Thunderstrike. All units are weapons-free." Shaw's image smiled grimly. "Understood, Captain. And Marcus, give them hell." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Steele looked around at his crew, humans from Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, and dozens of worlds the Council had barely acknowledged. They were young by galactic standards, their species barely 1,000 years off their home planet. But they were about to remind the galaxy of a lesson older than civilization itself. It's not the size of the fight in the dog. It's the size of the dog in the fight. And humanity had a very, very big bark. "All ships," Steele announced, his voice carrying to every vessel in the hidden fleet. "This is Steele. Today we stop being the galaxy's junior partners. Today we become something the Council has never seen before." He paused, looking out at the stars that had been denied to his people for so long. "Today we become free." Chapter 3. The Council's Fury High Counselor Vexithala had seen the rise and fall of 17 civilizations in her 7th-century tenure. She had witnessed the birth of new species and the extinction of ancient ones. She had mediated wars between beings of pure energy and creatures of living crystal, but she had never felt fear like this. The Council's emergency session had been called within hours of receiving the first reports from the Outer Rim. Reports that seemed impossible, even by the standards of a galaxy filled with impossible things. "Speak plainly, General Korthax," she commanded the massive Thrakari military commander whose chiton was still smoking from recent battle damage. "What happened at Sigma Station?" The insectoid warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his people. "High Counselor, they came from nowhere. Ships we had never seen before using technology that shouldn't exist. They destroyed our sensor nets before we even knew they were there." "But Sigma Station was defended by a full squadron," interjected Admiral Zergoth of the Malarian Navy, his slug-like form pulsing with indignation. 15 heavy cruisers and 50 escort vessels. How could primitive human ships? "They weren't primitive," General Korthax interrupted, something that would have been unthinkable under normal circumstances. "Their weapons cut through our shields like they weren't there. Their ships moved faster than anything in our databases. And they weren't alone." Vexithala felt a chill in her energy matrix. "Explain." "Outcasts, High Counselor. Species we thought extinct, conquered, or scattered to the rim. They fought alongside the humans like they had been allies for generations." The EM chamber erupted in disbelief. The idea that the younger races could have coordinated such a massive alliance without the Council's knowledge was unthinkable. They had monitors, spies, economic controls. Nothing happened in the galaxy without the Council knowing about it. Nothing had, until now. "How many ships?" Vexithala asked, though she dreaded the answer. "We estimate at least 1,000, possibly more." And High Counselor, General Korthax paused, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights like fractured mirrors. "They're not just attacking military targets. They're hitting the resource extraction facilities, the trade stations, the processing centers. Every source of materials that flows to the core worlds. Admiral Zergoth oozed forward, leaving a trail of slime in his wake. High Counselor, surely this is just the desperate action of a species that knows it cannot survive alone. Once they exhaust their initial supplies, Admiral, interrupted Dr. Velnara, the Council's chief intelligence analyst. I'm afraid that assessment may be optimistic. The Zephyrian scientist's crystalline form flickered with patterns of deep concern as she activated a holographic display. What appeared was a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with red dots marking recent attacks on Council facilities. Based on the pattern of assaults, the humans and their allies aren't acting desperately. They're executing a coordinated strategy that demonstrates intimate knowledge of our supply chains, defense networks, and resource flows. This level of intelligence gathering would require decades of careful preparation. The implications hit the chamber like a quantum shockwave. If humanity had been planning this for decades, what else had they been doing in secret? More disturbing, Dr. Velnara continued, is the technology they're displaying. Our analysts have confirmed weapons signatures that match no known Council designs, but show clear improvements over several of our most advanced systems. Impossible, General Korthax clicked. The humans barely understand basic fusion technology. They couldn't possibly— General, Vexthala's voice cut through his protests like a blade of pure thought. How many times in the last century have we been told that human engineering projects were impossible? How many times have they surprised us with solutions we never considered? The chamber fell silent as the truth settled over them like a heavy blanket. Humanity's reputation for finding unconventional solutions to complex problems was legendary among the younger races. The Council had always assumed this was a sign of their primitive, chaotic thinking. They had never considered it might be a sign of genius. What are our options? Vexathala asked finally. Admiral Zergoth pulsed with confidence. We crush them, High Counselor. We mobilize the full strength of the Council fleet, 5,000 ships from 20 species. We glass every human world, until they beg for the mercy they threw away. And if they have allies we don't know about? Dr. Velnara asked quietly. Species from the outer rim, the dark regions, areas we've never properly explored. What if this alliance is larger than we think? Then we fight them all, General Korthax declared, his weapons arms extending in a display of martial pride. The Council has maintained order in this galaxy for 3 millennia. We will not be challenged by upstart children and their cast-off allies. But Vexthala was no longer listening to the posturing of her military commanders. She was thinking about something Ambassador Chen had said during that final, fateful meeting. Something about humanity finding out what they were really capable of. For 7 centuries, she had watched the humans grow from primitive planet-bound creatures to a spacefaring civilization. She had seen them overcome every obstacle, adapt to every challenge, find solutions to problems that had stymied older, wiser species. And for the first time in her very long life, High Counselor Vexathala wondered if the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. Marshal the fleet, she commanded finally. But send word to all our allies. Tell them the Council calls in every favor, every treaty obligation, every ancient pact. If we're going to face humanity and their outcasts, we'll need everything we have. As the chamber erupted in martial preparation, none of the assembled leaders noticed the small device hidden in the ventilation system, a device that had been broadcasting every word to a ship hidden in the space between dimensions. A ship crewed by humans who had been waiting 20 years for exactly this information. The galaxy was about to learn that when humanity said they were done being junior partners, they meant it. Chapter 4. The Battle for Everything. The space around Arcturus Prime had never seen anything like it. What had once been empty void now blazed with the light of 10,000 ships arranged in battle formations that stretched across millions of cubic kilometers. On one side, the assembled might of the Galactic Council, massive Zephyrian crystal, ships that could shatter planets, sleek Etherian vessels that phased between dimensions, swarms of Thrakari fighters like deadly silver insects, and the biomechanical juggernauts of the Malarian Deep Fleet. 5,000 ships representing the accumulated military power of 30 civilizations. On the other side, something the galaxy had never seen before. A united fleet of the forgotten, the cast-off, the ignored. Human vessels bristling with weapons that shouldn't exist flew alongside the organic ships of the symbiont collective, the geometric constructs of the machine intelligences, and the living asteroids of the stone shepherds. Species that the Council had deemed too primitive, too strange, or too dangerous for civilized society. Captain Steele Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the tactical displays with the calm expression of a man who had spent 20 years preparing for this exact moment. Around him, his crew worked with the precision of a finely tuned instrument. "Incoming transmission from the Council flagship," announced Lieutenant Commander Nakamura. "Put it through." The hologram that appeared showed General Korthax in full battle armor, his massive insectoid form bristling with weapons and threat displays. Behind him, Steele could see the Bridge of the Supremacy, the Council's most powerful warship. "Captain Rodriguez," the Thrakari general clicked, "I offer you one final chance. Surrender now, return to Council space for re-education, and your species will be allowed to continue existing under proper supervision." Steele smiled, the expression containing all the warmth of deep space. "General, I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid we have a counter-proposal." "Which is?" "You withdraw to Council space, dissolve the monopolistic trade agreements that have strangled half the galaxy, and recognize the sovereignty of every species you've suppressed for the last 3,000 years. General Korthax's mandibles clicked in what Steele recognized as Thrakari laughter. "You cannot be serious. You are outnumbered 5-1. "I know," Steele replied calmly. "We were hoping for better odds." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Steele turned to his tactical officer. "Commander Vasquez, signal the fleet. All units, execute Battle Plan Omega." What happened next would be studied in military academies for the next 1,000 years, assuming there were any military academies left after today. The human fleet didn't charge forward in the expected desperate assault. Instead, they simply disappeared. Every single ship vanished from sensors simultaneously, leaving the Council fleet facing empty space where their enemies had been seconds before. "Stealth technology?" Admiral Zergoth oozed from his command ship. "Primitive but effective. All ships switched to quantum sensors and—" He never finished the sentence. The humans hadn't used stealth technology. They had used something far more sophisticated: dimensional phase shifting, adapted from captured Etherian technology and improved beyond anything the Council had ever imagined. The human ships materialized inside the Council formation, having bypassed shields, sensor nets, and defensive lines entirely. They opened fire at point-blank range with weapons that the Council's best scientists would later admit they didn't understand. Plasma forge cannons that fired miniature stars. Quantum torpedoes that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Gravity cannons that turned a ship's own mass against it. But the real shock wasn't the advanced weapons. It was the tactics. Humanity had spent centuries being dismissed as too chaotic, too unpredictable, too emotional for proper military strategy. The Council had always assumed that their own rigid, time-tested formations and protocols would easily defeat any human force. They had never considered that chaos might be a strategy. Human ships moved in patterns that defied traditional tactical analysis. They broke formation to assist allies who shouldn't have needed help, then regrouped in configurations that looked random, but somehow maximized their firepower. They sacrificed advantageous positions to protect damaged vessels, then turned those acts of apparent weakness into devastating counterattacks. And throughout it all, their outcast allies fought with the desperate fury of beings who had been told they didn't matter, who had been pushed to the margins of galactic civilization, who had been waiting their entire lives for a chance to prove their worth. The stone shepherds' living asteroids absorbed impossible amounts of damage while their mineral-based weaponry converted enemy fire into raw materials for instant repairs. The machine intelligences calculated firing solutions with inhuman precision, while their geometric ships reconfigured themselves mid-battle to adapt to changing threats. But it was the symbiont collective that truly shocked the Council forces. Their organic ships didn't just fight. They evolved, adapting to enemy weapons in real time, developing immunities to energy types, growing new organs to counter specific threats. "This is impossible," Admiral Zergoth transmitted to General Korthax as his flagship's shields collapsed under the assault of what appeared to be a living spaceship covered in teeth. "They're using technologies that violate the fundamental principles of physics." "No," came a new voice on the channel, calm and eerily familiar. "They're using technologies that violate the fundamental principles of Council arrogance." The hologram that appeared on both command bridges showed High Admiral Catherine Shaw, now wearing the insignia of the Allied forces. Behind her, Steele could see the bridge of a ship that made both commanders' blood run cold. The legendary Prometheus, humanity's first prototype super dreadnought, thought destroyed in testing 20 years ago. "Greetings, General." "Admiral," Shaw said pleasantly. "I thought you should know this isn't actually the main battle." "What?" General Korthax clicked in confusion. "While you've been focused on our fleet here at Arcturus, Captain Rodriguez's people have been conducting simultaneous operations across 17 star systems. Your shipyards, your resource processing centers, your command and control networks. By our calculations, you've lost approximately 60% of your military infrastructure in the last 4 hours. The tactical displays on both Council ships suddenly updated with new information, showing red indicators spreading across their territory like a plague. System after system going dark, fleets reporting massive casualties, entire sectors going silent. But more importantly," Shaw continued, "we've been broadcasting everything that's happened here to the entire galaxy. Every species, every colony, every outpost, they're all watching the mighty Galactic Council get schooled by the primitive humans and their outcast friends." The implications hit both commanders simultaneously. The Council's authority had always rested on the perception of invincibility, the assumption that they were simply too powerful to challenge. If that perception crumbled, "Surrender now," Shaw offered, "and we can discuss terms. Keep fighting, and we'll finish demonstrating why humanity doesn't ask for permission anymore." General Korthax looked at his tactical displays, at the burning wrecks of ships that had been invincible just hours ago, at the impossible technologies that had turned the Council's greatest military force into scrap metal and vapor. Then he looked at the long-range sensors showing similar scenes of devastation across 24 star systems, and made the hardest decision of his very long career. "All Council forces," he transmitted on all frequencies, "cease fire. I repeat, all ships, cease fire." The space around Arcturus Prime fell silent, except for the crackle of cooling wreckage and the distant hum of search and rescue operations. The age of the Galactic Council's absolute authority was over. The age of humanity had begun. Epilogue: A New Galaxy. 6 months later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the same crystal chambers where she had once been dismissed as a representative of a junior species. But everything was different now. The circular arrangement of seats had been expanded to accommodate 47 species instead of the original 15. Representatives of the machine intelligences sat next to delegates from the symbiont collective. The Stone Shepherds had sent a small asteroid that communicated through gravity waves. Even the mysterious void drifters had emerged from their dimensional hiding places to participate in galactic governance. At the center of the chamber, High Counselor Vex Thala still floated in her energy sphere, but her role had changed dramatically. Instead of the supreme authority of galactic civilization, she was now the coordinator of the Free Species Alliance, a position with far less power, but, she had to admit, far more actual respect. The motion to establish joint research stations in the Kepler sector passes by unanimous consent, Vex Thala announced. The resources will be shared equally among all participating species according to the Prometheus Accords. Sarah smiled as she watched the former council members vote alongside species they had once considered unworthy of recognition. The Zephyrians were already making plans to share their crystal-growing techniques with the machine intelligences. The Thrikari had discovered that the Stone Shepherd's mineral-based technologies could enhance their hive ship construction. It wasn't utopia. There were still conflicts, disagreements, and the occasional threat from unknown regions of space. But it was something the galaxy had never had before. Actual cooperation instead of domination. Ambassador Chen, came a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Captain Steele Rodriguez, now wearing the insignia of Admiral of the Allied Fleet. Congratulations on the Kepler vote. Thank you, Admiral. Any word from the Outer Rim explorations? Steele's expression grew serious. That's actually why I'm here. Our long-range scouts have detected something unusual in the Andromeda Gap. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology, including ours. Sarah felt a familiar chill. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's rapid expansion had revealed that they were far from the most advanced civilization. Out there were older powers, stranger technologies, and threats that made the old council's fears look reasonable by comparison. How unusual, she asked. The kind of unusual that makes our quantum weapons look like stone knives, Steele replied grimly. We're calling an emergency session of the Alliance Defense Council. If there's something out there that could threaten the new order we've built, then we'll face it the same way we face the Council, Sarah said firmly. Together as equals, with every species contributing their strengths. Steele nodded, but Sarah could see the concern in his eyes. Humanity had won its freedom and helped reshape galactic civilization, but victory had taught them something important. The universe was far larger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. As she walked through the corridors of New Geneva, past aliens who now greeted her as an equal rather than a junior partner, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had left the Galactic Council to save themselves, but in doing so, they had accidentally saved the galaxy from its own stagnation. The old order had been stable, but it had also been static. Species advanced to a certain point and then stopped, content to maintain their positions in the hierarchy. Innovation had slowed to a crawl. Exploration had become routine. Now, with dozens of species sharing knowledge freely, technological advancement was exploding. New ship designs that combined human adaptability with alien precision, weapons that used symbiont organic principles to improve machine intelligence calculations, art and music that blended the perspectives of 47 different forms of consciousness. But as Sarah reached her quarters and activated her personal communication array, she was reminded that progress always came with a price. The message waiting for her was from Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding Deep Space Reconnaissance. Sarah, Elena's voice was tight with concern. You need to see this. We found something in the dead systems beyond the rim, something that's been watching us. All of us. For a very long time. The attached data made Sarah's blood run cold. Massive structures hidden in the space between galaxies. Technology that operated on principles that defied every known law of physics. And worst of all, signs that whatever had built these things was aware of the recent changes in galactic civilization and was not pleased about them. Sarah looked out her window at the bustling space lanes around New Geneva, at the ships of dozens of species working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. They had overthrown one empire and created something better in its place. But as she prepared her response to Elena's message, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their real test was still coming. Humanity had proven it could fight for its freedom and win. Soon they might have to prove they could fight for something much more important, the right of all species to determine their own destiny in a universe that was far stranger and more dangerous than any of them had ever imagined. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of humanity and its allies had begun. But in the vast darkness between the stars, older powers were stirring, powers that remembered when the galaxy was young and had very different ideas about how it should be governed. The real battle for freedom was about to begin, to be continued. End of the day, humanity left the Galactic Council, everything collapsed.